speaking of that and the favorite wife, we had an interesting conversation because we were watching this and we thought, based on what we see here, they try to hide it in most cases, but we can tell that there are certain wives that Brady gets along with better, that he likes more. And Melissa had a good point. He may love them equally, but he likes some of them more.
Loving someone is way easier than liking them. You can love people in your family and think for 1 second about extended family. There are people you can love and you cannot like them, and you cannot want to be around them.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I was born and raised in the FLDS community. It is a polygamous group run by Warren Jeffs, and I moved out when I was 18 years old.
I was raised LDS. Sam and I have been married for, I was about to say 10.
Almost
10 years.
Yeah.
I keep going back and forth in my head of like, when do I switch and say almost? So
this August, guys, is very close.
So
I think you can
close.
get away with it.
Okay. We have been married for almost 10 years and have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We want to quickly thank our donors, our YouTube members, and our patrons over on Patreon. We really, really do appreciate your support.
Yes. We are so excited. I know we announced last week on Mike King's video, but we wanted to share a little bit more about my upcoming birthday trip next February, which I know sounds really far away, but it'll be here before we know it. We're going to be going on an amazing Western Caribbean cruise on Royal Caribbean's Harmony of the Seas, which is
the 4th largest ship in the world. So it's like a floating city. We've been on one almost that size, but not quite.
Slightly smaller. But
we're so excited.
Yes, we are going to be allowing people to sign up first that are Patreon members or our YouTube members because we have very limited availability. We only have room for 25 rooms. So 50 people, but just 25 rooms available with our group space. We want to be able to give everyone lots of time and attention and answer any questions and stuff. So we are really, really excited. Again, for all of our Patreon members and our YouTube members, you'll be able to sign up starting June 24th. And then everybody else, it'll open up to on July 1st. And you'll be able to check it out on our website and see full itineraries. So much fun stuff booked into this. And then one thing that we felt really passionately about, because Sam and I love to travel, is that a portion of every ticket sale is going to go to helping 2 people from a polygamous community like Sam that have never been on a big vacation before, and they're going to get to come on this trip with us. So a portion of every single person's ticket will help go to that cause, and we're really excited about that.
It's surprising how many people from these smaller communities, especially the high-demand religious small communities, haven't been on any really nice or big trips. So this is a great opportunity. I remember I had a lot of firsts when I left at age 18. So just a reminder of how big of a deal it might be for a couple of people. So we're looking forward to that as well, to sponsor someone to come with us.
Yes.
Or 2 people.
Yeah. And today we are going to be talking about the show My 5 Wives. We've had a lot of people comment, and obviously with our big Sister Wives saga of reacting to every season and starting from the beginning and doing that, My 5 Wives only ended up having 2 seasons. So it'll be a little bit more simple.
Here there's not as much drama in My 5 Wives, and that's why it didn't last as long, which we can see right from the get-go that Cody definitely made things more dramatic than this guy Brady, but still, there's plenty to talk about.
Yes, well, not only like drama, but this show I felt like there was a lot more insight into the religious dynamic, because this is different in the sense that Sister Wives and Cody and the Brown family were all part of the AUB, and they only left Utah not because they were leaving the religion, but because they had to leave because they came out publicly and the state was quote unquote coming after them, right? Yeah. But for My 5 Wives, they talk about the fact right at the very beginning that they had left the religious beliefs while still physically being located in Utah around their same church member group. Basically, they're still in the church community physically, and they are out spiritually, which adds a whole different dynamic, because clear at the beginning, they're like, we had to decide, okay, if we don't believe in this religiously, we decided to still stay together as a plural family because we love our family and we didn't want to separate our family, but it was all religious ties that brought them together in the first place.
Right.
And so with the Browns, you see that as they slowly start losing their faith in the religion, then things things already weren't good, right? But you see that as they start losing the faith in the religion, then there's no reason to really hold on to the bad anymore.
Right.
And for this family, they already have let go of their religious beliefs and decided they want to stick together for this. So it added, like, I don't know, there's a lot of things
Very
watching
different.
them come through their spiritual journey.
Yeah. And just to point out, they both come, the Brown family and the Brady or the Williams family come from the same religious background. They both belong to the AUB. So the thing that really stood out to me is the fact that these two families coming from the same religious backgrounds and belief were so different in the way they went about things. Mm-hmm. And that just goes to show that every family, every person, even if they come from the same religion, can be very different.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Although I did find it hilarious that in both cases, Cody was mainstream LDS, served a mission, came home, and converted to the AUB, right? And then Brady was mainstream LDS. His family converted when he was 16, and he fully converted and ended up in plural marriage as well. So it is interesting that both of the men of these reality TV shows aren't men that were born in the community, but although their wives were. And so I don't know, I just thought that was an interesting parallel. And I'm very curious if part of the reason why both of these men, I mean, Cody, we know where he ends up. But at the beginning, it seemed like he was trying really hard to have everyone be viewed equally. And that everything's a community decision, right? Where a lot of polygamous communities are very patriarchal, that it's just whatever the dad says. And we've talked before about how that can sometimes make polygamy easier because trying to get that many adults on board with the same idea can be hard, which we saw Cody and his wives disagree and have things crumble all the time because they couldn't all agree.
Oh yeah, all the time. And yes, with Cody, I don't know, something that really I was wondering a lot is if, because Cody and Brady came from the LDS church and then converted to a new religion, I also wonder if that's partly why they were willing to come out publicly and talk about it as well.
Yeah, because they didn't grow up with the same fear,
someone
right?
like myself, that you're born into a very closed off community that has these very strict rules and very fundamentalist beliefs, they don't want anyone else to bother them or to talk to them and things like that. So I have to wonder if not being born in it made it easier for them to come out and publicly display their family, you know?
Yeah. And I think just watching the mindset of, again, both of them seeming to try to value their wives' opinions too. I'm wondering if that is a mindset because of the way they were raised versus in the AUB. Because very interestingly, very early on in this season, when they're talking about whether or not their kids would live polygamy, and this is the Williams family I'm talking about, that Brady even admitted that he doesn't know if he'd want his kids to live polygamy because there are so many polygamous families where the husband is kind of a dictator and doesn't treat their wives well. Yeah. And they admitted pretty early on that they think they're kind of more of an exception, unfortunately, to the rule. And that's something that they don't necessarily want for their daughters. And I thought, dang, to actually admit that and say, you know, we recognize that we're different, but we see a lot of plural families very, very unhappy, and the wives are very, very unhappy, and that's very common, and we don't want that for our kids. I was like, man.
Yeah. No, at least they're being honest, though. It seemed like Cody was trying to almost push his kids into the idea of the religion that they came from and the plural marriage and all of that. But yeah, I appreciated that Brady and his wives were more open and honest about their ideas. And at this point, they had left the religion, so that would make a difference as well.
Yeah.
On maybe they didn't feel it was so important that their kids joined the religion and the plural marriage idea because they no longer believe in it themselves.
Yeah.
So I can see that being a big difference for them.
Yeah. Before we get into some of you kind of watch a little bit of their spiritual journey unraveling a little bit through this first season, which I found super interesting because having been through spiritual journeys ourselves, it's always interesting to see how people react to certain things as they're coming out of a mindset and the way they were raised. And oftentimes Brady's wives would be like, but you didn't grow up with that mindset, Brady, and we did. And so it's ingrained deeper in us, and kind of the patience in coming out of some of those ideals or standards or things like that. But before we get into it, I guess I should probably say, for those of you who have not seen the show, Brady Williams has 5 wives. And let me see if I can get these right, because man, After 18 seasons, I feel like we know the Browns well, but getting reintroduced to a new family, we're like, there's so many
And
people.
there's 5 instead of 4. I always forget the 5th one. So.
Yeah, and 23 children, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
Polly, the first wife, you have Robin the second, Rosemary the third, Noni the fourth, and Rhonda the fifth. And even the fifth wife has been married 14 years and Polly 21. So it's a smaller gap. There wasn't the one that comes at the end. At this point, they've all been together, all 5 wives, for 14 years now at this point. And again, I think watching all of them talk about their different experiences in kind of leaving their culture behind was the most interesting part. You know, they were part of the AUB, and it was something that, like, little things, even like talking about birth control.
Yeah.
When the producer asked about that, and Brady was like, oh yeah, we'll talk about birth control. And all of the wives were like,
no. And once again, because they were raised with this belief. Not only were they raised with it from birth, were all of them raised with it from birth?
Yeah, I think all the wives said that they were born and raised into the AUB.
So not only was it there from birth, unlike for Brady that joined in when he was 16 years old, but also being a girl, you're going to hear about these things more frequent, and it's going to be something that they keep just pounding on to make sure you understand that when you're married, you cannot have any kind of birth control, any kind of that, because it's preventing God's will. So in their minds, and this is kind of something that we experience a little bit too, even when you move beyond or move past a certain belief, it's hard to fully move past.
Yeah.
Things that just come up sometimes are really hard to talk about because you were raised to not do it a certain way. And if you're changing the way you're going to be living, it's still hard to talk about it.
To let go of the traditions. I think sometimes religious beliefs, you have a culture that comes with your religion as well. And sometimes even if you leave the religious beliefs, that culture and the tradition of just what you're used to and the way you're used to living can be one of the hardest things of letting go and seeing, okay, is that something I don't want to have in my life or do in my life because it's my choice? Or is it because that's just the tradition I was raised in and it was a religious one? Like, it's hard to separate out, and then deciding for yourself which traditions you're just fine keeping and you want to keep and pass along to your children, and which ones you want to let go of and move forward in a different direction. So birth control was definitely one. And they said that they were raised that it was a sin. Watching them, have wine night with the ladies, have a wine and cheese tasting. They don't say how long they've been out of the religion, but I can say when you leave a religion where you're not allowed to consume alcohol, that kind of transition can be a very big one and a very scary one too for a lot of people. We've known a lot of people who, after leaving a religion, are trying wine at the first time at 30 years old, or they're trying different drinks, or they're trying to learn what you even call drinks or what that means or what kind of things they like. So those type of things that are so common to other people who are just raised being around alcohol, something like them trying all those wines and even finding out what they like is really common for people who leave.
And you have different kinds of people that leave a religion too. Some of them will leave and they say, freedom, don't care about all of that stuff. I'm going to do what I want to do. And they go and they try all the things like drinking, and it's no big deal. And then you have other people that when they leave, they want to prove a point that they're not going to become this person that they were told their entire lives, that if they leave, they would become a certain kind of person where you would be doing all of these evil things, at least in the eyes of the religious group, that they were evil, like drinking in some cases. So they will leave and they will not want to touch a drink because they want to prove that, no, I don't want to live that way, but I also am not going to sin. So it takes years sometimes. And that's why I'm curious too how long they've been out at this point. But sometimes it takes a very long time to move past the idea of, you know what, there are just certain things in this life that aren't what I was told they were.
Yeah. Another one that goes along with that was when Brady decides he wants to get a tattoo to symbolize his family. And I thought it was nice of him to ask all the wives their opinion, because part of marriage, obviously, is making sure that your spouse is comfortable with certain decisions. But ultimately, there were 2 things that were interesting. One, he had a desire for that. His wives were obviously very hesitant. And I can't blame them, because growing up in the mainstream LDS church, tattoos were a no-no. Not only was it a symbol of like rebellion, but they believed that you were like permanently defacing something that wasn't yours. Your body's not yours. Your spirit's yours. Your body is something that God gave to you. And so therefore you have to honor it and keep it like a temple. And that's what I was taught. Now, the mainstream LDS church has shifted and come a long way when it comes to tattoos, by the way. So I'm not trying to claim into what they say now, or there's going to be lots of people I'm sure that are watching that are like, oh, there's lots of people with tattoos in our ward, and it's just fine. And I'm so grateful that the church went in that direction. In the For Strength of Youth pamphlet, when I was being raised in the LDS church, it specifically very harshly and in no uncertain terms said absolutely no tattoos. So that's what I'm sharing is my experience on that. But all of those reasons are the same that I'm sure they had in the AUB as to why they would be scared of Brady having a tattoo, not only because of the physical implications, but then also the judgment of that's an outward expression of like an internal rebellion, is at least how we viewed it. How is it viewed in the FLDS?
Oh my gosh. If someone had even considered a tattoo in the FLDS, they would be kicked out. That just was never allowed. At least during the lifetime that I was in the FLDS. So yes, and I know that, I don't know, it seems like multiple groups, religious groups have become a little bit more relaxed about the tattoos, but we were taught that you would be desecrating your temple, that your body was like a temple, and that if you put a tattoo on it, then you are
graffitiing the temple.
Yeah, you're putting this mark on your body, and it's this anyway. So it was very much talked against. And yeah, and that's pretty unfortunate for multiple reasons. One, it doesn't matter to me if someone does or doesn't want a tattoo. That's okay. That's their opinion. But when you teach that in a religious group that strongly, and then you're out amongst other people and you see someone with a tattoo, where's your mind going to go about that person? How could you not judge this person in the most harshest of ways? So that is where, in my mind, you have to be careful with the way that you talk about things that other people are doing, because it's so easy to be this judgmental person if you aren't teaching that, above all, most importantly, is to love and treat others well. Yeah,
rather than teaching it that it's a choice and that people have the choice to have tattoos or not, it's taught that it's a sin if you do. So therefore, anyone with a tattoo, you then view as a sinner. And that's definitely the mindset when you're raised in those groups from a young age, is that, okay, well, if it's a sin if I do it, of course it's a sin if they do it. And so, that's when you're right. That definitely gets tricky. I think that, or not tricky, that's when it gets problematic, is when people start using that as a judging stick to whack over other people's heads with based on their own beliefs.
And that's an easy one because you can see it. It's an outward expression of the way someone is living their lifestyle. But there's so many other things that people are judged on. If they speak a certain way, if they dress a certain way, if they drink a certain thing, if they, so many things. If you're taught within your small group that is so bad and evil and wicked, sure, if you're never going to leave your small group, then there you go. But if you're ever going to leave that bubble that you're raised in, you can't help yourself but judge others and judge them so harshly because of the way they're living their life. And in most cases, these other people weren't taught the same way. So they have no idea what you're judging them for or what the purpose of it is.
I thought it was interesting that Brady used the example of his wives having earrings as, why does it matter if this is something I want to do to decorate my body and you have earrings? Now, growing up in the mainstream LDS, like, oh, those are two completely separate things. It's okay if I put a hole in my temple. Only one was how it was when I was being raised. I know, again, it's more lax now.
Is it different now?
Now I believe it's based on your personal revelation, like personal beliefs and whatever you feel comfortable with, your decision with God. I believe that was a change within the last couple of years, which again is fantastic. I'm not knocking that. I just want to make sure that I represent those people who are my age that were taught that absolutely not, you cannot have more than one piercing in each ear.
Oh, I know that used to be the fact because but
it has changed.
When I was on a mission in Chile, there was this young girl that we were teaching the lessons to, and we wouldn't, and I'm pretty sure that it was the leaders way above us that required this. We wouldn't allow her to be baptized unless she took out her nose piercing, unless she took out her extra earrings and things, because it was very much, you have one piercing in your ears, anything in your nose, nope, you can't have that. You got to take it out. And
in order to be baptized.
And then they weren't supposed to put it back in after being baptized. So I know that that's the way it used to be. And I do think you're right. I think it has changed now, but definitely that's the way it used to be.
Yeah. And Brady gave some insight into the AUB because he said, well, you ladies, when you wanted to get your ears pierced and the leadership told me you need to not let your wives have earrings on. And I told them that it was up to them what they wanted to do with their bodies. Now, that's a huge deal. One, to stand up to church leadership. Two, I'm sure it was easier for Brady to do that because he was raised in the LDS where a single pair of earrings was not a big deal. And three, in his mind, the comparison of those two maybe would be of equal value to those women because to them, they weren't supposed to get the one piercing, right? And so if that's considered a sin, then and a tattoo's a sin, then it might be on equal playing field. Whereas in the LDS church, those two things were not on the equal playing field, which it just goes to show you that, again, it comes down so much to your personal religion's beliefs, right? And those standards and that culture that you are raised in is going to make a huge difference in what you're comfortable with and which things are on the same level or not.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
And so you get to watch as they are slowly coming to what their family's new standards are going to be as they're continuing to separate from the community emotionally and spiritually. And they do talk about separating physically as well. But first, I want to also mention that their oldest son from Poly, he actually had been baptized as a member of the mainstream LDS church and was talking about serving an LDS mission. So at this point in season 1, we don't know whether or not he's going to choose that for himself. But just to show that even though they were leaving the AUB, they were still open to and accepting of their son choosing the mainstream LDS church, which was the same as the Browns as well. And I find that a little bit surprising because a lot of the other fundamentalist groups like the FLDS, if you wanting to join the LDS after the FLDS, you might have experience in that, babe. Were they super accepting and like, woohoo, that sounds great. You're going to leave our church, go to that one.
The majority, I'm not going to share names, but the majority of people in the FLDS would say, how dare you leave the truth and go and join something that's false, that you've been taught your entire life they went astray and that they no longer hold the truth. What's wrong with you, right? That's going to be the majority. However, there is a couple experiences that I had, or yes, there were a couple that they were actually kind of excited. And at least in their mind, they said something along the lines of, at least you are still following a path and that you found something that you feel is right for you and you are at least continuing to believe in God and, Jesus Christ and that kind of thing. So there were the differences there.
But then there were other people who still thought that you were going and being part of the Great Abominable Church, right?
100%. I would say the majority of the FLDS thought that I was just crazy and that I had joined the false and big wicked church and that kind of mentality. Yes.
But I am curious if it goes back to the fact that both Brady and Cody had both come from the LDS. So for them, they're like, well, if you don't want the polygamy aspect, then sure. Like if they had good experiences while in the LDS church, then I can see why both of them were totally okay when their kids were like, oh, hey, I'm going to go be a member of the LDS church. Luckily for the Williams family, it sounds like their son got baptized before they had this show. Right. And so he was able to get baptized versus the Browns where they weren't allowed to because their family was publicly polygamous.
Right. And that's the only reason I can think of that he was allowed to, Josh was allowed to, and not the Brown kids that wanted to. Anyway, so yeah, it's very interesting to see the differences, but really the AUB and the LDS doctrines and teachings are very, very similar in what they believe. So I can see why they would say, you know what? I believe in these doctrines, I believe in these prophets and scriptures, but I don't believe in the idea of polygamy or plural marriage. Just an FYI, fun fact here, people within the FLDS church find the word polygamy as a negative word and that it should be plural marriage, which honestly, I wasn't even familiar with that because when I was a young kid running around, we would see other FLDS people in the Walmart or something, and we would pass and say, hey, what's up, plig? We were just joking around. But anyway, fun fact, side note. But it's so similar that I can see why they would just kind of like I did, it's a soft landing. You know, I don't believe in all of this really, really strict stuff, but I believe in some of the similar things. So this is very familiar and similar, but it's not so strict, and you don't have to practice polygamy to be a part of it. So I can see why some of them would feel comfortable with that transition.
Yeah, I have to go back to your fun fact. Are you talking about people who are still in it now aren't comfortable with the word polygamy?
In the FLDS, yes.
Oh, okay. I was like, were you talking about when you were growing up or now?
It might have been when I was growing up too. And
I feel like everybody I've ever heard of that was like, has left and used to, they always would say they called themselves plig kids and they were polygamists.
Yeah, no,
so it's a new thing.
It's a new thing. I recently had a kind of a rare opportunity to meet with someone from the FLDS that's currently active. And I brought up polygamy and they said, well, no, not polygamy. It's plural marriage. And I said, oh, okay. You know, plural marriage it is. So
interesting.
Maybe because our channel is called Growing Up in Polygamy, the word polygamy became a bad word now.
Did we do it?
Maybe we did.
Was that our fault?
I don't know.
Oh, we're the problem. Hello. Yeah. So is overall watching this family, they have a lot more kids than the Browns do, you know, and having that fifth wife, and there's a lot of chaos as far as certain things. But I'd say as a family overall, watching them, they eat family dinner together every single night, which I think was a huge deal. I have to give props to Brady that he seems to do a really good job of trying so hard to listen intently to every wife and their needs and to treat them as equally as humanly possible, which we know is impossible to do, right? That's an impossible task. But I've never seen out of any shows we've watched, documentaries, anybody we've ever talked to, maybe besides your father, you talk about how he treated all of the wives pretty dang equally.
Tried to.
Yeah.
At least around the kids, it seemed as though he would treat them equally. You know, he would spend time with each of them. I remember moments where he would just walk into one of the mother's rooms, not even close the door behind them, and just sit on their bed and talk with them. You know, and I remember that like a very vivid memory in my mind is with my father's first wife. She lived near the kitchen. Her bedroom was near the kitchen, and he would walk by on occasion and just go sit on her bed and talk with her. You know, and just have that very close relationship, just talking back and forth, and same with the other mothers. And so we just saw around the home that he was always trying to give one-on-one. And I'm not saying like in closed doors in the bedroom either. I mean, sure, that too, but actually where we would see him just sitting there talking and what you would think of as a normal relationship between husband and wife.
Yeah.
So I think he tried very hard to make that very fair. Now, that was in my home where we all lived in the same home. We're noticing on all of these shows that the wives each have their own home, basically, where they, you know, they have their own kitchen and kind of their separate little domain, which in some ways I can see that would probably be even better for any jealousy things, you know?
Yeah. Brady's was set up more like townhomes, like so he could easily bounce around, and then there were two homes on the same property, so a couple wives in one home, a couple of wives in another. But I'd say the wives did seem, now do not get me wrong, they were all very, very awkward in the beginning, which was the same with Sister Wives, like the first season, and I'd say even more with Brady's wives, because I think a lot of them have a more quiet personality than the wives from Sister Wives. But so they're just all a little more quiet, so it was very, very awkward the first couple episodes. I'm like, maybe it only lasted one season, because if they can't get over this awkwardness, it's going to be really hard to watch. But the wives did seem to go back and forth between the houses more often than what you saw Sister Wives, like just in everyday type of stuff, being there more for each other.
It seems, and once again, it's a show. So who knows what's being done when the camera is off, right? That's one thing too, is it seemed like, or at least what we saw, that Cody was just, from Sister Wives, was just being himself, whether the camera was on or off, you know, and
chicken
so,
with his head cut off all the time.
Some of the things we saw, we were just scratching our head. What is this guy doing? But I mean, we've also heard rumors that he was even worse off camera. So who knows? Who knows? But I'm just saying, with the Williams family, it seemed like, at least from what we can see, that the wives get along way better than the Brown wives did. In the sense that they're getting together, they're frequently going to each other's home, they're frequently talking about things that's going on and things that are concerning.
They're having planning meetings every single week, which we're a fan of, even with a monogamous marriage. Sam and I sit down together every single beginning of every single week, and we plan out our week and what our schedule is and where the kids need to be and where we need to be and what we need to get done. I feel like planning sessions are great, but they do that every week with all the wives. And I thought, wow, instead of them living completely separate lives, or what do we call it on Sister Wives, the plural monogamy, right? Instead, they really did work together as a family unit. It seemed like a lot more.
Yeah. And so that made me happy to see. It also made me happy to see that, I mean, if you can be happy about a polygamous lifestyle, at least if you're going to do it, it made me happy to see that Brady also tried to show a lot of attention and affection to each wife when he was with them, instead of just, hey, this is what I came to talk about, whatever, have a good life. He really tried to show them how much he loved them when he was there with them. Speaking of that, and the favorite wife, we had an interesting conversation because we were watching this and we thought, based on what we see here, they try to hide it in most cases, but we can tell that there are certain wives that Brady gets along with better, that he likes more. And Melissa had a good point. He may love them equally, but he likes some of them more.
And then you had a good point where we were talking more about it, because we always joke whenever people talk about marriage and stuff, and I'll be like, oh, our 10-year anniversary is coming up, and after all this time, I still really like him. And I recently was with a group of girlfriends who are all married, and one was about to get married, and I was like, man, I just still really like him. And they're like him? Well, don't you love him? And I said, well, yeah, but loving someone is way easier than liking them. And it's the liking him and him being my best friend every day that makes for a happy, healthy marriage. Like, you can love people in your family, and think for 1 second about extended family. There are people you can love and you cannot like them, and you cannot want to be around them. And when I said that to you about the Williams family, like, oh, I think he just likes them more. And then you took it a step further and you said, I think more than even liking them, it's about the connection that they have with them.
That he just connects with some easier and better. And how could that not be the case, right? If you are married to 5 different people, there's going to be someone or maybe a couple in that group that you're going to, you'll love all of them. You're going to have kids with all of them. So hopefully you love all of them, but you're going to have this easier connection with people, just like friends or siblings, right? There's going to be that sibling or that friend that you just are always talking to, that you just connect with. You get along so well because you have similar personalities or similar, ideas in life. So there's going to be, and we can see that with Brady here. It seems like with his first wife, especially, that he just really clicks with her, and it just seems so easy. And he likes to be there and with her and talk with her. And
yeah, I feel like they would have had such a happy monogamous marriage.
Right.
Not that he doesn't have a happy marriage, like overall, their polygamy at this point, 1 season in, but you can tell that they really care about each other, and the connection is there still after 21 years, right? And so I feel like the two of them would have continued to be best friends if they had gotten married in a monogamous religion, in a monogamous relationship. They would have just continued to be best friends.
And, people would ask them, well, now that you don't believe in the religion, do you regret living this lifestyle and this polygamy? Well, that's a tricky one. And because people have asked me that too, do you think that your parents regret it? And as a child that grew up in polygamy, you can't really say that you regret it, because now you have all of these wonderful children. Right? I mean, you can't say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I mean, they have 23 children. So if they hadn't had this lifestyle, they wouldn't have the children that they have now. So once it's done, you have to be happy, and that's the life that you chose, and that's going to be your beautiful life, hopefully, right? If you don't mess it up somehow. But with that many kids, you can't regret having children. At least I hope that's not the case.
Yeah. And I think they did a good job of being honest about the fact that, at one point, I think when they got asked that question, was it Rhonda maybe, who was like, No, and it was in the Q&As. There's a Q&A episode where viewers had asked that same type of question. And, Brady kind of had that answer, and or whether or not they would have gone into plural marriage if it wasn't for their religion.
Right.
And with Brady coming from the LDS, he seemed a little more open to like, yeah, this is still something that I would want and that I would do. And most of the women, but especially I think it was Rhonda, said specifically that they got into this because of their religion. So you can't really separate it. There's not a way to say woulda, coulda, shoulda, because I came into this because of my religious beliefs. Yeah. And I think it was Robin. She said, well, I married you because I fell in love with the married man. How else could you get in, or how else, how'd she word it? Something along those lines, where she said, well, when you fall in love with the married man, polygamy is the option. But then, she was joking, they kind of laughed, and she said, but realistically, Brady would have never allowed himself to fall in love with another woman. And I would not have allowed myself to fall in love with a married man if we hadn't been raised in the religion that we were, and being taught that that was okay. So I thought that was good that they acknowledged that, again, that comes back to the culture and the religion. And it almost always will. Now I know that there's now more people in regular life where consenting adults are participating in polyandry and polygamy and those type of things. So I'm not saying that it can't happen outside of religious beliefs, but it tends to, in the United States, it's religious beliefs that are the primary source of it.
Yeah, it's interesting when they were talking about that, because they said something along the lines of, no, I was not forced into this. The question was something like, did you feel forced into it?
Oh, that was it, yeah.
And they said, no, I wasn't forced into it. But I'm just going to sum up what I heard them say, even though they used a lot of different words. I heard them say, I wasn't forced into it, but I wasn't given another option.
Yes, that was, 100%.
Right. So if no one's there with your handcuffs on and pushing you into, you have to get married to this person. You have to get married right now.
Like in the FLDS.
Well, that happened in other groups, yes, but not in their group. It doesn't sound like they forced anyone into it. But when you're raised a certain way your entire life and you're not given another option, this is what God wants, this is what you're supposed to do, then it's what you're going to do if you want to be obedient, if you want to have this happy afterlife. So in a way, their environment forced them into it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they at least said that for themselves, they felt like it's what they were supposed to do. So.
And leaving the religion, they have said that they all decided that they did want to continue with the family and they wanted to continue being a family together.
Yeah.
And again, overall, at least for this first season, it does feel like they put a lot of effort in trying to be a cohesive family unit. There were things that the wives did together. This is going to sound bad, but it's true. Like the Brown family would have a sister wives vacation or a sister wives dinner or lunch every 2 to 3 years when the producers were like, don't you think it's about time that we force you into an awkward situation?
And then it was still so hard
And then it was still so hard for them, right? These ladies, you could tell it wasn't. There were times, I'd say probably the most comfortable times of them filming were when it was just the wives, or when a wife and Brady were gone and the other wives were together and just hanging out, or they were hanging out with Brady and it was the 6 adults and they were all having a poker night, and you could tell they were having fun and that they were comfortable and happy doing that, where you just didn't see that with the sister wives, with the Brown family at all, and even when Rhonda's going through some scares about possibly having breast cancer, and the other wives get together and say, let's go clean her house and make her lunch and just help her to know that we love her. And I was like, they wouldn't have thought of that if that wasn't something that they have already done before without the camera rolling.
Yeah.
And it was really sweet. So you could see little things like that where they would try to step up and take care of each other. And that was sweet to see.
Yeah. It seems like, and Brady even admitted this, that the show for them, because with the Brown family, we often hear people say that the show kind of destroyed them, or at least pushed them in the direction they were already going, which was disaster. Mm-hmm. But with the Williams family, Brady even admitted that the show has helped them come closer, because I think it is kind of not forcing, but it is pushing them to the conversations. And because they're becoming more open and conversing with each other more often, I think that's growing and building their relationship instead of breaking it apart like it did for the Brown family.
Yeah.
So that, hey, I mean, if it takes a show, it takes a show, I guess. And it seems like as well that now that they are obviously making money on the show, all of a sudden Brady's trying to catch up on all of the anniversaries that he's missed for however many years, and get the ring fixed for one of his wives that he's put off for many, many years. So it's obviously things aren't perfect. It's very, very clear things aren't perfect with their family, but
no marriages are, right?
Right. No marriage, especially when you're married to 5 different people. But it seems like now at least they're trying hard to make things work.
Yeah. I will say before we wrap up, there were a couple things that were very religiously tied, that were some of their traditions that they did, that every time it would happen, we were like, when you're leaving a faith, especially like they just did, and there's certain things you're still holding on to that you still believe in, even though you don't want to be part of that organization anymore, because they said they're not part of any organized religion at this point. Mm-hmm. But some of the traditions and the religious traditions that come with just having faith in God, faith in the power of prayer, faith in just their belief system, obviously didn't just disintegrate into nothing either, which can happen when people leave religions. So they obviously still have a lot of faith and belief, even though it doesn't adhere to the AUB. Some of those things that I just want to point out were like when they gave Rhonda a blessing, and Brady gave a blessing by the laying on of hands. Now that's something, I know that lots of different religions give blessings for sure. The laying on of hands, or using that wording when they did that, and that Brady did it as he would have been considered the priesthood holder. They didn't use the word for a priesthood holder or a priesthood blessing because they've left the religion, but he did lay his hands on the same way that a priesthood blessing would be done within Mormonism.
Let's just say he didn't reinvent the blessing by any means. He took out by the power of the priesthood. But aside from that, it was basically the same. And of course, the idea that all of his other wives were gathered around with their hands on her shoulder and that kind of thing. I don't know how the AUB does it, but I've never seen women in the group.
Yes, which might have been part of, those type of things might be things that they transformed their past beliefs and morphed it into something that they all felt more comfortable with, which I thought that was super sweet. But yeah, same. It's not something within the mainstream LDS. Like if a baby's being blessed, women don't get to hold the baby. The men hold the baby. As a matter of fact, I've heard that there's been debates and hard things about women asking to, and some have been allowed. And then overall, it's been kind of squashed now that they're not supposed to hold the baby. There's things like that are just the traditional, men laying their hands. But it looked like they had conformed it a little bit into what their current beliefs were. So that was kind of cool. Another one was, sorry, go ahead.
No, just on this one before we move on, the power of love is huge. And I think that is what Rhonda, she's the one that's getting the blessing, right? Trying to remember these names with 5. Anyway, Rhonda, she said that she felt this immense power of love and comfort when receiving that blessing. And you know what? If that's what something like that's going to do for you, that's amazing. It's crazy how much the power of love can help someone physically feel better. And honestly, possibly heal better because of that feeling that they have. So it is a very powerful thing. And so I was at least happy to see that that did help.
Yeah. And along with her diagnosis, I'm just glad that she was also willing to admit that while she was willing to get a blessing and she felt calm and peace, she was willing to go to the doctor and be able to get medical help as well. Because she said her mother had died of breast cancer, because in the AUB, they believe that the power of God will heal you. And that if you're not healed by that, then that's not part of God's plan and you'll be rewarded in the next life. And that's what happened with her mother, which was so extremely sad. The idea of, certain blessings, or in those religions, a lot of times if the priesthood blessing, if there's oil and certain prayers being said, there is the belief that the power of the priesthood power, the way I was raised, is literally the power of God on earth.
Yep.
And
that's
if God,
of it, yes.
Yeah, and if God says to heal someone, they will be healed. And that's, I'm sure, is the same priesthood power that the AUB believes in, and that they're going to say that as well. And so I'm sure that while her mother most likely received a priesthood blessing of healing, for it not to work and for her to pass away. Not that they would say that it doesn't work, but that, that wasn't part of God's plan,
Right.
and that, she was needed on the other side.
Right.
But it's sad for those that are left behind. And I was proud of Rhonda for being willing to work through the process of getting out of the mindset that her going and getting things looked at and taking preventative measures and making sure to use all the medical information available, that wasn't a sin.
Right.
Because that is hard when you've been taught your whole life that that's a sin for you to do that. And now you're choosing that, and you're choosing your health and your life over a religious tradition or religious beliefs. That can be so, so hard.
Oh, yeah. Man, it would be tough because when it's with something that serious, you definitely would call upon any help you can possibly muster up, regardless of your belief. Sometimes I feel like it's easy when something really, really serious is happening in your life to fall back on to whatever your beliefs are, because you felt that that's the only way that you will get the help that you need from a higher power. And so, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me because the AUB seem to be shying, even though the AUB is more mingled in with the world, the outside world, than the FLDS is. The FLDS seem to be more open to the idea of getting help from the outside world. Now, we have shared stories here on our show and other experiences that I've heard about where Warren Jeffs or maybe some other leader didn't allow someone to go and get help when they really needed it. But in most cases, at least in my experience, when I needed a doctor, I got a doctor. In most cases.
Yeah.
Now,
you didn't get in a car accident and they didn't try to give you a healing blessing. You went to the hospital. I flighted to the
hospital. I got the help I needed along with my brothers, and that kind of thing happened. I've had stitches before. Now, granted, some of the health care that I got was within the community, but they did have some licensed nurses and doctors and things within the community to help people. So that being said, I just want to point out that it wasn't like we were forbidden to go to a hospital within the FLDS, which I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. So overall, it was a very interesting first season. I feel like I'm just barely now at the end of the first season starting to remember at least the wives' names. So we'll see. And there's another Robin, spelt the same way.
Yeah.
So I was like, uh-oh.
So I can
see what's going on with Robin.
Remember her name easily. If I accidentally call some of the other wives Christine and Janelle and Mary. No, it's after watching 18 seasons of Sister Wives though. Whew, man, there's so much Sister Wives in my brain right now. So it's hard to transition onto another family and show and try to remember all of their names.
Yeah, but it was also a little refreshing because of how different they were than the Brown family. And whether it's the beginning because it's the beginning of a show or whether it's because their family is just inherently so different, I guess we'll let the jury be out on that.
It'll be interesting to see how season 2 goes because there's only 2 seasons. So it'll be interesting to see if there's a big finale or if it just kind of fades away. But regardless, we're here for it and we are willing and happy to share our opinions and experiences based on what we see here.
Yeah, if anybody else wants to hear what it was like for Sam to grow up in polygamy, or if you have any suggestions of other shows that you want us to react to, then please leave those in the comments below. Thanks all for being here. We'll talk to y'all soon.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.